Welcome to the third annual Monadnock International Film Festival. My name is Phil Smith. This is the Radar Marketing Glass and Gear interviews, and my guest is Jeff Stern, director of The Morning of Everything, a short film. Trying to think about how to describe it. It's very sort of poetic. Tell me a little bit about the film, and then I have lots of questions.
Yeah, I mean, my simple tagline is a fever dream about fatherhood. So it's I describe it as a lyrical short film. I mean, traditional film would be based around a screenplay, and this one's more based on a poem. So it kind of follows more of a poetic sensibility, I guess. It's a little dreamlike. The visuals try to capture the way a 3-year-old boy sees the world, and then as you're seeing that, you hear the voiceover of his father kind of musing about fatherhood.
Right. Which is you.
Which is me. And the boy is my son.
And the boy is your son.
It's a very personal movie.
So I want to ask you about how it came to be made in terms of how you came up with the idea. Was it a moment? Do you remember the moment that you were sitting there and thinking about,
Yeah, I remember the time period for sure. I mean, when those of us who have kids go through this period of many sleepless nights, and my wife and I sort of did shifts where you'd be on one night and off the next, and so if you were on, you were kind of listening for the baby, and the other person got to sleep. And so on my nights when I would sleep on the couch and listen for our son sleeping, you know, you're kind of in and out of sleep and having kind of waking dreams. And I, you know, as a filmmaker, I'm always thinking about film ideas, and I just started thinking about this idea that I'm consumed with both how this baby sees the world and this little kid sees the world, and also, honestly, kind of thinking some dark things about how my life is over now. I'm not young anymore. I'm a father. I don't get to have freedom anymore. And you're kind of thinking these things, and I thought, I'd love to make something that captures both of those ideas. That's sort of the wonder of childhood and also kind of the skepticism that you have when you become a parent that, am I ever going to be an independent person again?
Yeah. So this film starts off. It starts off with the boy playing on the beach, and then the narrative comes in, and as you said, it's very poetic. In fact, it even rhymes.
Yes.
And as it sort of goes along, we're seeing it from the perspective of the boy. But as it progresses, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there are elements of it that are bringing in the life that the kid might eventually grow into, and sort of juxtaposing him next to that while his innocence is playing, but the world is getting more complicated.
Yeah.
And is that kind of what you were after?
That's very good. Yeah. I've really jammed it full of stuff. I mean, I don't take this approach with everything I make, but with this particular film, I really went on instinct, and a lot of times it was this scene makes sense to me. I'm going to put it in and hope it works with the narrative. But it is kind of, some of the things that happen to the boy are more emotional based than kind of logically or practically based. And so as it's called The Morning of Everything, and the story kind of follows a morning to afternoon to evening. As it gets darker, as it gets later in the day, the father's thoughts become a bit darker, and the boy finds himself in a more kind of treacherous world.
Okay.
And this is accompanied by the father musing about what's it going to be like when he goes off on his own and becomes a man, and what kind of a man is he going to be, and what does that say about my own childhood, and it kind of, you know, mirrors that.
Yeah, and what's amazing about the film, and when I first saw the film and I watched it, you know, it took a little adjustment period to get used to the sort of the rhythm of the poetry, and it starts off on a beach with hundreds of toys, sort of in and out of the water and stuff, and I'm like, well, you know, I'm trying to gather what this is all about and stuff. But as you start to go through it, and when I finished watching the film, I have to say, I actually thought to myself, my God, this is a beautiful film that I'm personally glad it was made, because
Thank you.
It has a resonance to parents, I think, for sure. That feeling of where's my kid going to go in life. But what was amazing, and I want to find out how you did this, is how did you film your son being so focused on certain things while all this craziness is going on? Like he's chasing some feathers or something, he's picking up, and there's like a carnival going on behind him.
Exactly.
How did you film that?
Well, so the movie is 12 and a half minutes long, and we shot who knows how many hours of footage. all of the stuff where he's looking at the camera and talking to me and just wandering, screen, off screen, obviously doesn't make it into the movie. So I really just you just have to get those few moments where he's looking the right direction or walking the right direction. And I realized on the first day of shooting that you're not going to get a, quote, performance out of a 3-year-old. You're going to get him to sort of be the essence of a 3-year-old. And if you're lucky, you'll get him to look where you want him to look and walk where you want him to walk and pick up what you need him to pick up. And everything else is what's going on elsewhere in the frame. And so on the first day, I kind of had this thought like, this isn't going to work. He's never going to stop talking to me off camera and sort of not doing what I want. But we sort of found a way to make it work.
And keeping him from looking at the other stuff that's going on.
Right.
Which I would think would be a challenge too.
Right. And there's also definitely an element to the shooting of this that was documentary. I mean, the way I described it to my cinematographer was, we're making a nature documentary about a 3-year-old boy in a sort of fantastical world. And I think that really helped him have an approach to shooting it. Like, the camera is on the level of a 3-year-old all the time, and it's, kind of handheld and loose as if you were almost filming a wild animal. And that helped all of us sort of put into context how we were approaching doing this.
So I have a couple questions about some elements in the movie. One, there's a scene in there with some construction equipment.
Yep.
And like a forklift comes down, or not
Right.
a forklift,
A backhoe.
a backhoe comes
Yep.
down. And inside the backhoe is like a bunch of muffins. And
Mm-hmm.
he reaches in and starts eating a muffin. I mean, for instance, with that scene, what's the thought there? The thought that kids little boys love trucks and they like eating muffins. And I mean, is it as simple and innocent as that, or is there more to that?
Yeah, it's funny, when you start breaking it apart, it's hard to remember the origin of some of these things. I mean, with that was actually Leo's idea, my son. I mean, because I was concerned when I went into this project that he was too young, that I was, breaking child labor laws, that this was, that you just shouldn't do this with a 3-year-old. And so I really wanted to make sure he was on board with it, and this was something that would be fun for him, that he would understand as well as he could, and also that he felt like he was, as funny as this sounds, a collaborator on. And so we would talk at dinner sort of leading up to this, like, Leo, what do you think would be some stuff that you would have in this? And that was one of the ideas he had, was he literally said a backhoe full of watermelons and muffins. And I thought, I'm not going to overthink that. Let's put that in the movie.
Yeah, that's amazing. You could have some successful Hollywood movies with him actually
seriously
being a consultant, probably.
Right. It's been pointed out to me that he probably deserves a writing credit for that input.
Right. So there's a sort of an adult figure in this, and describe that adult figure that he follows throughout the.
Oh, the owl.
The owl.
Yeah. So we've really got parallel storylines in this movie. You've got the story. The father's story is basically the voiceover. We never see the father until the end, and what you see on screen the whole time is the boy Leo and his story. He has, that's called a lovey, this little owl thing. It's like the head of an owl and like a towel, and that's Leo's thing that it's like his comfort thing that he sleeps with, that he's had since he was a tiny baby.
Now, is that a real one?
That's real.
That's the real one he had.
That's his.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the story is, and again, this is sort of looking at the world the way a 3-year-old sees it. If he lost that, I sort of imagine that to him, that feels like a person. Like a child's toys feel like these, like their trucks feel like real trucks.
Yeah.
And their animals feel like real animals that are not static, but actually moving and active in the world. And so when he loses that most important thing to him, I imagine that it feels to him like it's running away from him on the beach. And so this thing that's sort of the inciting incident of the story is he loses his owl, and the owl at that point becomes an owl man, which is how he sees it.
Yeah.
And then that becomes the thing that takes us through all of these different scenarios as he's trying to find the owl. And we sort of see him on the heels of the owl, but he kind of keeps getting away from him.
And the costume is great. I mean, it's very well done and you do see the lovey, stuffy, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
You see it, and it does look exactly like it. But as this 3-year-old child, did you explain to them, or did you all of a sudden he looks up and he sees a 6-foot version of this stuffy? I mean, he must have been elated.
That was or terrified. Yeah, that was a fear I had that it was going to go either way. That he was just going to be like so psyched to see this owl man, or he was going to start to cry, and that would be the end of it.
It would be like
and
that.
it was a little bit in between. I think he was a little bit intimidated by it. The guy who was in the owl suit was this great actor that I've worked with before named Mike Shine, and he's got kids, and he had a great rapport with Leo, and so it really became more about Leo knowing that Mike was in the suit, and Leo likes Mike, and then it became fun for him. So
Nice.
that was an important dynamic that
Yeah.
needed to really get worked out in order for this to work.
Yeah, and so the moments that there was a moment there where the owl drives off on the back of a pickup truck,
Yeah.
kind of goes out of sight, and the kid, looks like devastated or something. And so that's purely editing and shooting, and I mean, he was probably looking off at a, I don't know, a lunch or something like that at the time he shot that, but it was beautifully done the way it was.
Thank you. That's his. I would say that's the moment where he gets the closest to acting, because it really is like his arm is extended and he's like, stop, wait. And I think
Was that really happening in the scene?
I think that we were shooting him watching the owl go away on the truck. But when you're editing, sometimes you just find a little piece of a clip that works, and it's out of context, and you recontextualize it. So honestly, I can't quite remember where that came from, but when I saw it, I was very excited because I knew that's going to work for the scene where the owl's driving away.
And then in the end, we see you on camera, and the voice of the narrative, and you've got his lovey, and you're bringing it back to him and stuff, and a very, very touching ending to it and stuff. And so it's a beautiful film. What has been the response and stuff in terms of people that have seen the film and stuff?
It's been great. I mean, I've been to a bunch of film festivals with it, and it's I mean, I think probably filmmakers all answer that question the same way. It's nice to get some positive feedback in the form of festival acceptances, and things that people have said to me. I definitely get parents coming up and talking to me. Not that it's a movie exclusively for parents. I hope that it works for different audiences, but it seems to particularly connect with people who have had the experience of having children. A couple of people have also suggested that I think about adapting it as a book too, which is something I'm thinking about. Sometimes I think something is meant to be a particular medium, and this does feel like it's a film to me, but I am exploring the idea of maybe adapting it as a book.
It almost has a Where the Wilds thing feel to it.
For sure.
But so I have to ask you, where did you get, like 100 plastic trucks?
Yeah.
You had a lot of those things. Did you have every parent donating their toys?
Combination of a couple things. I had a really good associate producer who was tasked with, I just told her, over the next couple of weeks, get as many trucks as you can. And so, people give this stuff away. There's like Freebox and Craigslist. People will, please take my son's trucks. He's grown up now. So it was that. We bought some really cheap, from the job lot, Ocean State job lot.
Sure.
But I did, as with most of this movie, we found ways to not spend a lot of money on it because, a lot of people have trucks they want to give away.
Nice. Very cool. Well, what are you working on a project now in terms of besides the book? Or?
I have some ideas kicking around. They're definitely in the sort of rough stage, but I'm thinking about a feature after this on the very general subject of people's relationship to their devices. So totally different direction from this.
Excuse me, I got to take. I hear where you're going. I'll be interested in seeing that one.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple of years at the festival.
I hope so.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and good luck to you the rest of the festival.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.